Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unboring Business Planning. Yes, I said it, unboring. So, at the end of the last Norfolk East meeting, when Gordon mentioned business planning, there were a few comments that struck me. One of you rolled your eyes. Gordon, was that you? Someone else said they preferred to wing it. I think Carrie said something on the lines of she wasn't sure where to start with it. And someone else mentioned that they prefer to go with the flow. So all of that's fine. Everyone has their own way of doing things. But it did make me wonder whether there was a misconception about what a business plan is, that perhaps it's all about some huge document with 5-year growth projections and cash flow charts and whatnot. Now, it could be that if that's how your mind works, but for me, it doesn't need to be like that. It can be unboring, something that empowers us and makes us feel good and is really, really useful. And I do get that it sounds boring. Even the words business and planning are massively dull. So the way I look at it is this. Editing is all about the client, their brief, their needs, their project. Marketing is all about the client, or at least it should be. Our message should be focusing on their problems, their concerns, and how we can alleviate them. But planning is all about us. It's our me, me, me moment, and that's why I like it so much. So there are just two questions that underpin business planning, I think. First, what do you want? And second, how are you going to get it? And that really is the crux of it. And there's one single thing business planning comes down to, and that's being organised. So thinking back to that me, me, me moment I mentioned before, perhaps you could frame the idea in terms of those letters you sent to Santa when you were 5. Well, I certainly sent those kinds of letters to Santa when I was 5. 25, 35. Anyway, they're all I want, I want, I want. And it's the one time of year when I was allowed to be a Greedo. Um, it's not the only time of year when I am a Greedo, but when I'm allowed to be a Greedo. And business planning is not so different. It's where you get to spend time on indulging in what you want. It's like a gift list to yourself. So it can help to divide our gift list into 4 types of business wants: emotional, financial, practical, and skills based. That way it makes it easier to get a handle on where the cupboard needs filling and where we're well stocked up. So I made a list of things we can consider as emotional wants. Maybe we want to de-stress or increase our confidence, or perhaps we have a need to feel like we're successful. And by that, I'm fully aware that people define success in all sorts of different ways, which is, of course, why it's emotional. Or maybe we want to be recognised as an industry expert in relation to some specific skill set we have. Financial wants are all about the money. Maybe you want to earn more per hour or day, or maybe you feel you want to create a stream of passive income to supplement your editing work. Maybe you want to increase your rates, or perhaps there's a piece of kit you want to buy. It could be that you want to feel better prepared for retirement, but haven't made the time to speak to a financial advisor about pensions and the like. So now practical wants. These could be things like a desire to work fewer hours, wanting more clients, developing a strategy that would enable you to get rid of current clients who are a pain in the backside. Or maybe you want to set up a more clearly defined office space, or create a better website, or develop a more powerful marketing strategy, something like that. And then finally, the skills-based wants. So these are training related, but not just editing training and professional development, though that stuff absolutely counts, but tools too. So perhaps you want to increase your efficiency but aren't sure what software will work for you. Or maybe you want to feed into that passive income stream thing I mentioned before, but want to learn how to create online courses that would help you do that. Or maybe you want to get some help to improve your website and you need to improve your design skills. Or maybe you want to develop or expand a new set of editing skills. So for example, you're a proofreader who wants to do more stylistic revision, or you're a copy editor who wants to develop structural editing skills. So those are examples of all the different things we might want, but why bother writing all down? Why bother documenting it? Best reason I can think of is that it stops us forgetting. Business planning isn't about creating something that's unmovable, some awfully huge long-term to-do list that makes us focus on all the things we haven't done but should be doing. It's just a way of recording ideas to help us get organised. So let's look at some of the questions that I hear most often. First of all, what should be in it? Well, my answer to that is whatever you want. It's about remembering stuff, not about setting impossible goals. How long should it be? As long as it needs to be. It can be 2 pages, 20, 200. It's your plan, so you can do what you want with it. The third question is, do you need one? Well, my response to that goes back to the stuff I've already talked about. If you want something, if you struggle to remember everything, and if you have questions rather than answers about how to get the thing you want, then yes, I think you need a plan. But if you don't have any future goals you want to achieve at the moment and you have a great memory or you already have all the answers, you can bin the idea. Fourth, how detailed should the plan be? Again, that's up to you. I'm a micromanager, so I include everything, but you might be a bullet pointer. Fifth, must the business plan be in one document? Absolutely not. You can have mini plans for each of your individual goals. And in fact, that might suit those of you who've been in business for a while. It's a personal choice, whatever suits you best in terms of organising your business gift list. Then what if your plans change? Well, this goes back to what I said earlier. This isn't something that's set in stone that you can fail with. It's a record, a reminder. If the plan changes, you just add, delete or tweak the content. It's a fluid thing. And finally, what time frame should it cover? Again, that's totally up to you. If you think it's realistic to achieve your goals or some of your goals in 2 months, that's your time frame. If some of the things you want will take 2 years, that's the time frame. The point is that the schedule doesn't determine when you achieve the goals. It's the other way around. The goals determine the schedule. So now I'm going to go over 9 reasons why I think planning or getting organised so you can get the things you want is a good idea. I think plans reduce procrastination. They move us from thinking about stuff that we wish was different to showing us how we can make that thing happen. And for reasons I'll talk about a bit more in a minute. So I've talked about this already, but trying to work out how to achieve something often means remembering a lot of information. If you've got a brilliant memory and are really good at organising every little thing in your head, that's great. But I'm not. I can hold the basics, but the nitty gritty, like the URL of a useful tutorial on how to do something, or a particular date on which I can access some information I want, or some other useful guidance that will help me achieve that goal, I can't hold all that stuff. There's too much going on in my head and in my life. So I like the fact that a plan allows me to micromanage all the information, but on my terms. I mentioned this before. Don't forget that the schedule is determined by the goals, by what you want to achieve and by when, not the other way around. You're in control. So let's say you want to hone your developmental editing skills and you find out that Sophie Playle's running her next online course 3 months from now. It'll take you however many weeks to complete it. So that's your schedule. Another goal might be to get a website up, so you can give yourself just a few days perhaps to buy the domain name, but maybe you want to schedule 2 weeks for research into which hosting service to use and another 2 months to create all the copy. And perhaps another goal might be to create a dedicated home office. You decide to investigate having an extension built, but there's a lot to find out and you'll need to save up. So the schedule for that might be 2 years or so, especially given what's going on at the moment. The point is to have a space in which you schedule realistically rather than creating a pressure point. And everything in that business plan is movable so that you can, it can form some sort of contingency for when things in life change. Unless you've got money to burn, there will be things that need budgeting. Plans give us the space to think about how much the thing we want will cost and how we might get the money together. So maybe we can put a little aside each month for that new laptop or buy a second-hand one. Maybe we'll wait for a Black Friday sale. Maybe we'll take on work at times we wouldn't usually do in order to finance the purchase. Again, the business plan is a space in which to think about ideas and record them so we don't forget. One of the things that I've noticed is that when I start planning and recording all the things that need to happen to enable me to get what I want, I find that some of those things on the list are already in the bag or nearly in the bag. And that makes me feel good. And so a business plan can be a way of recording what you already know or what you've already done as much as a list of what else might need to happen. And that's a good thing because it's how we can make what seems like a big goal seem more manageable. Which leads me to talk just a little bit more on manageability. Richard Dawkins's book Climbing Mount Improbable comes to mind, and business planning, that focus on what we want and how we're going to get it, can feel overwhelming. The task seems huge, but when we break this stuff down into small chunks, just like evolution, it starts to seem possible. So think about each goal in terms of all the little bits that make up that thing you want, rather than the goal as a whole. It's much easier to handle that way. If you're someone who likes to wing it, fine. All I'd say is that winging it doesn't help you prepare for the challenges. Business planning is therefore appealing to those of us who take a more sort of forewarned is forearmed approach. It's not about making life difficult, but about acknowledging that life has a way of throwing up obstacles. And so when we spend a little bit of time thinking realistically about the impact, positive and negative, of achieving our goals, we're arming ourselves. So when I set up my business back in 2006, I made notes about my thoughts on how long it might take me to get a regular income, what percentage of my letters to publishers might not even be replied to. And actually, I got work quicker than I'd anticipated, but my response rate from publishers was pretty much spot on. And so I didn't get down about that when I didn't get replies or I got declines, because I'd already researched it and acknowledged it and recorded it in my business startup plan. I mentioned the impact on mood just briefly earlier, but getting organised is a proactive thing to do. Think about the gift list mindset, about how you're creating a plan so you can achieve the things you want. That's a nice thing to do, something just for you. When we do stuff just for ourselves, something that's going to help us move forward, that makes us feel good. So if you're not a planner, but would prefer to feel happy than sad or frustrated, give it a whirl. I found planning how I'm going to achieve something a really good distraction when there's a lot of tough stuff going on around me, either at home or in the world. We've all got rubbish to deal with, and while there's no magic wand that will make it go away, taking positive action to get what we want can help us to stop wallowing. And I know that's incredibly difficult at times, but I really find that distraction principle helpful. Not all the time, but now and then. Which leads me to this. I couldn't mention positivity without a reference to coronavirus and COVID-19. This is rubbish and it's affecting every single person on the planet, which is unprecedented in our lifetimes. So what I'm going to say is this: planning can't ensure that we're immune to the emotional, physical, social and economic impact of a global pandemic. Of course it can't, but it can help mitigate it and help us cope with it. That's because when we think about our goals, the stuff we want, and work out how to achieve them, we're doing something rather than focusing constantly on all the ways in which it's affecting us negatively. Maybe some of the clients I've got booked in for the next 6 months will pull out. So I've already been planning now how I'm going to handle my response to that, what it will mean for the enforcement of my T&Cs, which I'll have to bend so we can reschedule. What will I do instead with that time? More marketing, more online course creation, volunteering? And if so, what courses, what type of more marketing, what type of volunteering? I don't have all the answers yet. It's a work in progress, but I'm preparing, getting organised and documenting those ideas and the links to resources I might need or information I want, so that I don't forget, is really helpful. And I'm just tweaking as I go. So I want to give you just a little case study, a more positive one, about business planning and how it's helped me. So thinking back to those original gift boxes, here are some of the business things I want from Santa. I want to be continue to be visible to indie fiction authors so that I have the work I want and need. I want to earn more money. Who doesn't? And I get immense emotional satisfaction from being seen as someone who has enough expertise in, for example, business planning and marketing to be worth listening to and buying books from. And it feels odd admitting that, a bit embarrassing actually, But when I first started creating this webinar, I realised how strong the emotional impact of that is. And even though it's not something that was ever in my original business plan back in 2006, it has become something that, if I'm honest with myself, it's a factor. So with that in mind, back in around October 2018, Denise Cowell, the CIEP's lovely marketing director, called me up. Now, Denise and I were friends already, though not as close as we are now. We were whittering on about marketing stuff and a conference we were both planning to go to. And then she said, "Want to do a podcast with me?" And in a millisecond, it flashed through my head that I had no clue how to do a podcast, no time, what with all the full editing schedule I had and a regular blog, and I had no particular desire to do audio. And then in the next millisecond, I thought, A, it would help make me more visible. B, that might eventually lead to more bookings and more money. And C, it would raise both our profiles because no other editors in our community were doing it regularly. And D, if I said no, she'd ask someone else and I would be so jealous it would be unbearable. So by the time my mouth opened to tell her I didn't have time, what with the blog and the full editing schedule, the word yes was already coming out of my mouth. And so there we were, both clueless and right out of our comfort zone. And it was documented planning, documented business planning that made the editing podcast possible. Because in October 2018, it felt like climbing Mount Improbable. And yet we made it happen in 3 months. And that was because we got a plan together and got ourselves organised. So this is a very brief summary. We started making notes in a planning document about what we'd call it. We didn't have answers at the beginning, just the business plan was just a load of ideas and thoughts that got pruned and added to and deleted over time. So who might the audience be? How much would it cost? How would we make it visible? We thought about what we needed to learn, and it quickly became obvious that we had skills we could use. Marketing and writing skills and existing content that could be repurposed. And that made climbing the mountain seem a little easier. But there were other things like audio editing, hosting, recording, uploading, distribution, and aggregation that we knew nothing about. So all of our research notes and links were documented too, and those showed us how we could fill our skills gap. We made notes on how we might record it, who we would consider for hosting it, and we made sure all the links were in there. There was also kit to think about. Did we need expensive kit, or was some of the stuff we already had be sufficient? We also planned joint planning sessions over Skype so we could chat face to face and work out who would do what. And we thought about how we might in the longer term make some money from it via sponsorship. We thought about guests and the schedule and whether it would be every week or seasonal. And we recorded ideas about how we'd measure success in the long term. Now, that original planning document is now a folder divided into subfolders, each with several documents. The plan became more streamlined as we learned and discovered, but without documentation, without a plan, we'd never have achieved it. We'd have just carried on talking about it, procrastinating, nothing would have got done. So that's my wee case study. Of course, planning is only the first step. That needs to be followed up with implementation. That's how we get results, how we end up with the thing we want. But that first step, that first documentation, all that research, whatever needs to go into that initial plan is, I think, crucial. So that's it. A very quick skip through unboring business planning. Thank you for letting me bend your ear. And if there's any questions, just get in touch.